Okay, as part of its economic assessment, Crisil has put out an interesting report, and the report is titled State of the Nation. A report was released yesterday. We have with us DK Joshi, Senior Director and Chief Economist at Crisil, with us from Mumbai. Dr. Joshi, great having you with us. Let's talk about the essence of this report titled State of the Nation. What are the key concerns? I'm sure most of them are in public domain, but as part of your analysis, what were the key concerns that you observed for the economy right now?
Well, I think there are some good things, there are some bad things, and there are some ugly things in the economy. At this juncture, I think there are two key positives emerging. There are silver linings. One is the good monsoon. This year is going to lift agriculture growth to 4.5%, and this is going to spill over to rural consumption and also going to create demand for some agri-based manufacturing sectors like two-wheelers as well as tractors. So that's one part. And second is that the sharp weakening of the currency has created some improved scenario, some improvement in scenario, particularly for those exporters who source their raw materials domestically. I'm talking of IT, ITS, pharma, textiles. I think these sectors will outlook has improved. But overall, I think if you look at the overall scenario, I think the weakness in the economy still dominates these key few positives that are coming out. One of the critical concerns right now is that the economy is weak, but we don't have any ability to give stimulus. I mean, the inflation has started picking up, and we expect it to go up to 6.2%. In this scenario, central bank cannot cut rates. I think so. The ability of monetary policy to stimulate the economy is hurt. The second, I think, is that the second stimulus that usually is deployed when the economy doesn't do well is the fiscal stimulus, and that also I think there's hardly any possibility with pressures on fiscal deficit. The government will not be able to stimulate the economy through higher spending. So that I think is another source of concern. The real problem areas in the economy relate to the overall growth. I think the GDP growth has come down, is expected to go down to 4.8%, and I think what we have found is that this is a major source of stress for India Incorporated. The slowdown in demand is going to create stress for many companies. So that's and within that, I think importantly the industry is not doing well at all, and it's actually going to slip further from little over 2% growth last year to 1%, and that I think is not good news at all. Then I think we have problems on the external front. The current account deficit is coming down, but still going to remain above the prudent levels. So in this scenario, global risk appetite, global liquidity matters a lot. So even if there is a small shock, that can cause a big ripple in the currency. So I think this is broadly the summary of our findings. So there are elements of positivity, there are elements of things not doing so well, and then there are some ugly aspects which are coming out. So overall, I think the weakness in industry, the weakness in services is going to continue. The only silver lining from GDP side is that agriculture will do well. Clearly not enough to offset the headwinds that are coming from industry and services.
After slashing the full year FY14 GDP estimate to 4.8%, are we looking at more cuts ahead?
Well, I think it looks like we are on an L-shaped path, which essentially means that you've come down to a little below 5%, and you are going to stay this for the next few quarters. I mean, that's what 4.8% GDP growth means. The second half might look marginally better than the first half, but overall, I think the weakness in the economy is going to continue. What it also means is, as I said earlier, that industry is on a weak wicket, and the services sector is slowing down, partly as a consequence of slowing industry. So we don't see further downside to this at this juncture, but there could be a positive surprise if agriculture actually does better than what we expect. And given that the monsoons have been fairly well distributed, and major part of India, which accounts for the bulk of food grain production, has received a little over 8% above normal monsoon. The sowing area looks good. So I think in this scenario, the agriculture, it's possible, could grow at more than 4.5% that we expect currently. So I think that's the growth side of the story.
Just so, Dr. Joshi, because of a well-distributed monsoon this year, what is Crisil's outlook on agricultural output this time around and its impact on GDP?
Well, I think if had agriculture not been normal, then I think even getting 4.8 would have been very, very difficult. I mean, if agriculture improves, let's say beyond what we expect currently, if it moves up from 4.5% growth to 6% growth, then the overall economy grows at 5.2% instead of 4.8%. So it will have spillover effects on industrial sector as well, and will lift the overall growth. But I think the upside is very, very limited at this juncture.
All right. Your report talks about how the rupee could rebound to perhaps 60 or so by March 2014, and how we're looking at perhaps a reduction in CAD to 3.9%. Any which way, I mean, the government's 3.7% target looks a bit tough. Talk to us a little bit about your overall outlook for, the full year, what with also reducing trade deficit as we've seen in August?
No, I think we are forecasting current account deficit at around 3.9% of GDP, which is lower than 4.8% last year. And I think this is premised on trade balance correcting. This is premised on gold imports slowing down. This is also premised on non-oil imports slowing down because the economic activity is weak. So requirement of imports will be lower. And I think on top of that you have some benefit, even though little, of currency weakening and on exports. So I think if you put all these things together, you get a scenario where current account deficit goes down, but not to the level of comfort where policy makers would like it to bring it to. So a lot of vulnerability still remains on the external front.
Dr. Joshi, what stresses nearly a quarter of the companies, according to your report, is the demand slowdown. Now, within these 1/4 of the companies that you analyzed, how many are directly correlated to the consumption theme here? I'm just trying to understand, is consumption space witnessing a major demand slowdown?
Well, I think we see some offset to overall consumption demand weakness from the rural side of the economy. I think rural economy also contributes to about 50% of overall consumption in the economy, and that part is going to do well. So I think the consumption scenario would be marginally better than the investment scenario. So I think the consumption side of the story is weak right now, but I think we'll look up. I think we can't say the same thing about investment. So I would see less stress coming from consumption-oriented sectors compared to investment-oriented sectors.
Among the 2,481 companies that Crisil rates as investment grade, how many could face a rating downgrade because of the current macro issues?
Well, I think that you'll have to, that I can't answer. You'll have to talk to the ratings people. I mean, I'm a macroeconomist, so I can handle the economy industry part. So I think you can keep this question out, at least not for me.
Dr. Joshi, there's been an absolute collapse in the investment cycle. According to you, which are the sectors which are facing the maximum liquidity crunches now?
I think that also is, again, I think it's clearly, I think we've pointed out in our report, I mean, infrastructure is, capital goods is clearly the segment where I think which are highly leveraged and are impacted by high interest rates most.
All right, Dr. Joshi, thank you very much for your time and for the perspective. With that, we're wrapping up this edition of Power Lunch. You've got the markets still dropping and the rupee appreciating at this point in time, depreciating at this point in time. There's been so much of fluctuation that's happening, Ashu. One wonders whether this whole sentiment turnaround everyone's talking about is actually real.
Or maybe irrational exuberance, let's call it that. Meanwhile, the markets are not doing that great. We'll continue to focus on the markets, on corporate development. Stay with us.